An unhealthy injustice plagues our world. Some diseases affect billions, yet they attract little interest from the pharmaceutical industry and public sector. 1% of new medicines developed are for neglected diseases. Deadly diseases like sleeping sickness, where the only treatment was so toxic it killed 1 in 20 patients. Or leishmaniasis, a difficult to treat disease that kills or leaves people with terrible scars. Or Chagas disease, one of the biggest parasitic killers in the Americas. There is so little research into these diseases because those affected are poor, leaving doctors powerless to treat patients. When Doctors Without Borders won the Nobel Prize in 1999, they used the proceeds to explore a new, non-profit way to drive medical innovation. Public health research institutions from a number of countries joined Doctors Without Borders and the World Health Organization to launch the Drugs for Neglected Diseases initiative. Our mission is to harness the best science to develop drugs for the most neglected patients. DNDi acts as a conductor of a virtual orchestra, bringing together the public, private, academic, non-profit, and philanthropic sectors. We've searched millions of compounds. Once we have a hit, our scientists make it into a safe drug. We then run clinical trials in some of the most inhospitable areas of the world. With our partners, we've shown that alternative drug development can work by delivering 8 new treatments, including the first all-oral treatment for sleeping sickness and over 20 candidate drugs. With the World Health Organization, we've launched an organization to develop antibiotics to fight drug resistance. And it's not just about what we've achieved, but also how. We share our research data and costs publicly. We make drugs for patients, not profits. We've strengthened the capacity of countries affected by neglected diseases so they can lead future drug development. We've made progress, but the neglect still remains. So we're asking you, help us shape our next 15 years. Help us grow this experiment in innovation to save many more lives around the globe. www.dndi.org.
Hello, thank you, Marianne, and hello, everyone. Maybe, Marianne, if you could show the slides for me. I think I'll go back to a few of the points which were highlighted on this video. Really, starting with the origins, which are very key. We're talking about neglect, and neglect was really quantified when we started DNDi with only 1% of drugs. All the R&D research efforts were of 1% for 12% of the disease, which resulted in what we call the fatal imbalance. And when we looked after the initiation of few PDPs, not only DNDi, we could see that there was progress with 4% of drugs being developed or in progress. But still not enough, obviously, for this billion disease morbidity. As was said on this video, we were funded by, and that's key, I think, to DNDi. We were funded by research institutions in the endemic countries that had to fight these diseases with others. And this was with the initial seed funding from the MSF Nobel Peace Prize. And our vision is really to look at neglected disease first, but we expanded to neglected populations, which explains why we, started working on HCV and pediatric HIV, because there were no specific R&D or no access to some of the R&D that was developed for those diseases. We have succeeded since 2003 in delivering 8 treatments, and we are hoping that in the next 3 years, we will develop another 7 to 8 new treatments. I will look a little bit here, like to describe how, what is specific about our model, and maybe that can be served for other purposes. And I'll go very quickly through these 6 items. The needs-driven, the independence, the fact that we are what was mentioned as, the virtual orchestra, and collaborative, open, transparent. The globally networked argument will be very deeply discussed by my colleague Suman Rijal, that directs directly the the activities in India and the neighboring countries. the fact that we are talking about access and we feel we need to be transformative. So Needsdriven starts really at the heart of what we are doing. First, we are a not-for-profit organization, but I would say the key thing is probably when we start engaging in a disease area, we develop the target product profiles. And the target product profiles are really, you know, the code of conduct. What do we need to deliver? What is the unmet medical need? What will bring benefit for patients? This we do via what we call clinical research platforms. They are all different, but they are specific to a disease. They bring together the actors that will be involved, sometimes patients associations, but not very often for NTDs, unfortunately, but academics, lab technicians, doctors, policymakers, regulators, NGOs. So we bring everyone and we discuss and we try to understand what are the attributes of a new treatment. What is it that's needed? So we develop this in a really collaborative way. And I think it's because we understand from the very, you know, the roots, what is it that's needed, that when we will reach the objective, if we do, then we consider that this will greatly facilitate access. So when people talk about having the end in mind, it starts with the TPP. The next feature of DNDi is financial and scientific independence. And so that's very key because we have to be able to make our decisions, take the risks we want to take, have support from funders, but not only one funder being directly deciding on our priorities. And so on the right side, you can see that we have a rather even split between public funds, and private funds. So we have a lot of governmental support from a huge amount from DFID in the UK. We have Germany, we have Spain, we have the Netherlands. I'm going to forget some, so I won't go. We have France, the US a bit. And then we have private funds, and the private funds are essentially MSF, the Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, EDCTP, I forgot to mention in the public funds. So that's one. And then we also have another way of looking at our finances, how much of the finance is targeted to one specific projects, which we call restricted funds. So for example, a donor only wanting to finance sleeping sickness versus unrestricted funds. Of course, it's good to have a balance because it allows you to go for attrition, to move according to the advancement of your portfolio. So, and again, it's quite evenly split, which is an advantage for us. Collaborative, open, and transparent. So obviously we are about 250 at DNDi. We work with more than 1,000 people working with us. So we are rather small, but we try to make our collaborations synergistic. So we have collaboration with all types of academy, CROs, scientific leaders, of course, public health leaders. And that's how we are, that's the collaborative approach. The open approach, our colleagues share very much. We have an open mycetoma research, for example. We contribute to that. We have agreed to sign the WHO statement for public disclosure of results and data. We are very much supporting the work with IDDO to share our data and make sure it can bridge and help other researchers. So that's one of the ways we are open and transparent. Globally networked, so I will leave my colleague Suman to give you an example, in fact, of what this actually means, having leadership from the region, driving priorities and the way R&D is done. Access oriented, and that's, I have to say, it's one that we know we should focus even more on. It's really making sure indeed that anything we would develop would be at the end affordable, available, and adapted to the community. So I would say, the adaptation to the community, that's taken care of by the TPP. For example, in our TPPs, we set a price and a maximum price. Then the affordability means that we agree with our industrial partners who will be in charge of manufacturing, distributing the drugs, that we agree before we sign an agreement that it will be affordable. So that's discussions we need to have with them to make sure that we won't be hit by an obstacle at the late stage. And the availability means that we need to make sure there will be sustainability of production, manufacturing, or that we have the rights to give share the IP with generic manufacturers at some point if the lead company doesn't want to, cannot continue. All of this is very much in collaboration with our BD team that makes sure we have the right agreements in place. The transformative one, which is going to be almost my last slide, is really what can we learn in the way we work that can inform, more public health leadership in what we do. So initially we discussed an intellectual property policy, and that's in place. I would say the next one is how can we learn and support new mechanisms for regulatory approval, because this can be a serious bottleneck to access as well. And we've seen a lot of support to that. We also contributed to, at some point, there was the demonstration projects of the WHO. So we were selected with the first project for visceral leishmaniasis, which was a way of saying, okay, countries decide that the priority for them is to have a treatment for leishmaniasis. So it was in a way showing how countries could lead, in fact, their own setting their own priorities, R&D priorities. And so I'd like to end this presentation by showing you a little bit our R&D current portfolio. So on the left side, you see the diseases. On the horizontal lines are the value chain, the R&D value chain from discovery to implementation. So for sleeping sickness, we have already delivered 2 treatments, the combination of nifurtimox and eflornithine, which replaced melarsoprol in 2009. And then in 2018, our first new chemical entity that came, it's an illustration of how we work. It came from compound mining of existing drugs, some of which, so we screen about 800 compounds. One came out, it had been abandoned by Höchst, and we reopened the preclinical work. We showed that it was potentially positive, promising for sleeping sickness for both forms, Gambiense and Rhodesiense. We initiated a phase 1. We signed at the time of a phase 1 a contract, an agreement with Sanofi. Then we continued the entire R&D development, even the CMC work, until we finished concluding all the trials in DRC and Central African Republic, worked with Sanofi on the filing, the registration. It was submitted via a very nice collaborative mechanism called the Article 58 of the European Medicine Agency, which gave a positive opinion, which was followed by registration in the Democratic Republic of Congo 39 days after. So with this, we can learn a lot of how we can improve things and give a treatment that is oral and changing really how we work, how we treat patients. But we also have, again, an illustration of our model with our collaboration, a drug that's called acoziborol, very special drug, very long half-life, so long that we can give it as a unique once-a-day treatment to treat sleeping sickness as well. And so that, I think, so the development is ongoing. We are concluding the pivotal study, and we'll have results by the end of the year. That could be a real game changer and potentially a treatment that you could give to a patient and potentially his family if they are at risk. And that could help, something which I did not mention and I will mention now, that could help to support the WHO roadmap and the objective that will be set publicly and launched, I guess, in some months, the roadmap to elimination of the diseases by 2030. So I'm not sure I have time to go through the entire portfolio. I'd like maybe to mention mycetoma. We have just to say that we have a very busy R&D portfolio in leishmaniasis. So visceral leishmaniasis, my colleague will speak to that, cutaneous leishmaniasis, post-Kala-Azar leishmaniasis, HIV-VL co-infection. We have a very busy portfolio in Chagas disease, so looking at access with vasnidazole and also wanting to support the prevention of mother-to-child transmission in young women, but also looking at new chemical entities. In filaria, we're looking at finding what is missing now, also in the WHO guideline, a macrofilaricide to treat the cause of the disease. And then mycetoma, which was not a disease that was on the WHO list, which we contributed to push for it to be added to the NTD list of the WHO, which resulted in having interest from big donor agencies to try and, bring a solution, fund research, fund epidemiology, fund the things that were not there and that made that disease so silent and abandoned. So in addition to that, outside of mycetoma, we are doing some work on HIV and hepatitis C, not in the same exact way as we are doing for the portfolio of NTDs, but trying to find short-term solutions for young, very small babies who are born with HIV and who cannot tolerate the bitter liquid, not easy to use solutions of Kaletra, and for hepatitis C to make sure there are affordable treatments in the regions where especially genotype 3 hepatitis C is a very nasty disease. So I think I'll stop here. I've taken maybe too much time, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nathalie. No, not at all. You have not taken too much time. I think that was a really inspiring overview of the pipeline, or the efforts and the work that's been ongoing over the last 15 years and really coming to fruition now, and accelerating and changing the ways in which PDPs kind of operate, and also ensuring that growth going forward. And as you said, with quite a few items there with the potential of being complete game changers. So that was very interesting. Thank you very much, Nathalie. You've had a couple questions during your talk, and maybe you'd like to give a few comments on those. The first one is from Jeffrey Makenga, and who was wondering whether DNDi could support the development of a vaccine against NTDs. Is that something that you may be looking at? And if so, which vaccines would be of priority to support?
Thank you for the question. I think what we're trying to do is something that others would not be doing. And in the field of vaccine, although it makes a lot of sense, there are already groups that are doing that. So for now, we've decided that we should focus on treatments, not yet vaccine. We don't have the skills and the bandwidth of doing that for now. And I think that's always, it can evolve, but let's look at what other groups can do and help in that field.
Brilliant. And a second question from Barbara Nasto, and Barbara is from Trozon X17. I hope I've pronounced that properly, Barbara. Barbara's based in Cambridge. This is a non-profit company developing diagnostics. And Barbara was wondering, has the engagement with industry grown over the years since the DNDi's founding? And also what's kind of what nature, how has the nature of that relationship evolved?
So thank you. It's a two-way response. Yes, it has grown, because if we look at the numbers of partnerships we had with the industry in the past, we've expanded this to a large extent. But no, it's not enough, because as you know, the pharmaceutical industry was moving away from infectious diseases, and we are worried about that, because we feel there's a need to continue this work. So it's a double answer, I would say. I think one of the new partnerships we're looking for are those exactly with diagnostic companies, because the more, the better we get at having treatments that can be used in remote settings, but I would say close to where patients are. It needs to be coupled with a diagnostics that will help us to identify patients that can benefit from those treatments. So we feel that it's, we need to tighten these collaborations with the diagnostic industry.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the WHO 20 roadmap to 2030, which Wele spoke to us about at length on Tuesday. And in fact, diagnostics is kind of one of the major areas that they're also highlighting for the future of NTD control and surveillance. So perhaps, something to look at in future. So thank you very much, Nathalie. And you've had a lot of thank yous, not just for your talk, but also more generally for the work of DNDi. Stephen Bramer saying, thanks for your progressive and productive foresight and assistance. Yibatel Akilo is also saying thank you for all the great work you've done in visceral leishmaniasis in Ethiopia. He's also in the chat, you may have seen that, but also very open to the possibility of collaboration. He's an immunology and molecular biology lecturer at Debre Marcos University, Ethiopia, and so was wondering how you could possibly collaborate with each other. So perhaps something to follow up or a partnership to explore. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people interested to join into your amazing vision when it comes to furthering the R&D for neglected diseases and neglected patients.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, because DNDi is a collective organization, we want to also thank our partners everywhere. We have many and we need more. So I would just say that if there are questions, I'm happy to take them and maybe also link you with our offices in the region, which might be a direct good introduction to Sunan for India.
Brilliant. Yes, a lot of people, also Jérôme Estaquier, thank you for this presentation, and I will be interested to discuss the future, in particular working on visceral leishmaniasis, leishmania immunity and reservoirs. So a lot of future conversations to, ongoing there. Perhaps the mention of VL is a good time to move on to our next speaker, Sunan Rajal, who is director of the DNDi regional office in India. Nathalie, please do stay with us. I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions that you can also input in a few moments.